Welcome to Chaos, Courage and Coffee, the podcast for anyone who's felt like on the outside I'm holding it together, but inside I'm struggling.
And we do it with honesty, heart, and just enough coffee to get through the day.
Good morning, Vanessa. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I am good, thank you very much.
So today I'm going to hit you with this one. I would like to talk about comparison and comparing ourselves to others. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I recently heard a saying, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. So everybody out there, forgive me if you know how it actually goes. But comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, that's the saying. I'm familiar with that one.
Okay, so for those at home that don't know, or for those of you who are listening that haven't heard this before, basically what they're saying or what we're trying to say is that when we compare ourselves to others, we are not recognizing or appreciating the work that we've done. We're on it. We need to understand that everybody's on a different life journey. And if you're comparing your level of success right now to somebody who's been doing this for whatever it is, if we talk about podcasts, and we're still early, I don't know what episode this is, I don't remember. Let's say it's episode number 10. For example, comparing ourselves to somebody who's been producing podcasts for 4 or 5 years, Joe Rogan or somebody like that. Of course, we're not going to have the same level of success. We don't have the million followers and subscribers or whatever the case may be. So it's no good comparing ourselves to others because it's only going to lead to disappointment in ourselves and our own life journey.
Yeah, I use an example that's a very real life example where I can actually use comparison to my advantage. That you got to be clever because you got to realize the trap of comparison that Brett's just talked about. So if you go to the gym, this is really fascinating. You go to the gym. Now, there's all sorts of people at the gym, or there is at the gym that I go to. And you've got young people. You've got slim, fit people. And you just look at them and go, right, you try not to look, obviously. Okay, I didn't say that. I'm not looking. And then you've got people rehabbing. You've got people who are starting their journey and they might be like overweight. They might be slow. And you know what I discovered is I can manipulate how I feel by choosing who I compare to. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to look at you, but sometimes I look at these people with their bodies and I do compare and I'm like, wow. I can use it for inspiration though, like, whoa, I'd love to have a body like that. Like the fact that they're 20 odd and I'm not, maybe, you know. But then there's other people, as I say, who are starting a journey or they're rehabbing, and then I can say, but I'm ahead of that person. And that's not like a judgment on that person. It's just where I'm at. And I can feel better, when I touch my toes and I'm like thinking, that person can't touch their toes. I can. The next person is a gymnast and whoa, what they can do is amazing. What I'm saying is there's the full range and we do have, I don't know why, it's an innate thing that we do. Okay. And I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but we do compare. But be aware of it so you can use it to your advantage because otherwise it generally, I think this would be true, Brett, generally comparison becomes a very negative thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does for a lot of people. And I think you're right. Choosing who we compare ourselves with can be empowering. And it can also set up goals and targets. You said the young 20-something-year-old with the really fit body, and I want to look like that. That's great. You're not going to be that young ever again.
Am I not going to be like, is this not possible? Are you dropping something in there? Are you talking about my age now as well?
Far be it for me to comment on a woman's age.
Hey, good on you.
But we can't wind the clock back. So we're not going to be able to do that. I mean, I'm grey hair and all that sort of thing going on, obviously the grey beard. And, I'm not going to be that 20-something either. But identifying what we do want and comparing ourselves to others can be beneficial, but in a lot of cases, it's not. In a lot of cases, it is unfair to ourselves and our own life journey. I think the main comparison we should be aiming for is the version of ourselves yesterday or last month or last year. Am I better? How do I compare to where I was? Not somebody else's journey. It's your journey. We are individuals. We're all living our own life journey, and we need to compare ourselves to yesterday, not somebody else's today.
You know, that is such a good point. And again, I've got a sporting analogy for that because people say to me, like, I do run and I play squash, and people say, do you do competitively, or are you going to go and do this marathon? And I actually say, and I don't know where this came from, I actually say no, because I actually only compete with myself. Exactly what you said. Like, I am only asking, am I better than I was last year or yesterday? Not even day by day, by the way, because I can have. So when I used to run, some days I felt like, I don't know, to use a saying, I was running like the wind or whatever. But I used to get home and I used to message my kids to tell them I was back and say, I was Forrest Gump today. I just ran and ran and ran. So it became my shorthand for, yeah, Forrest, you know. And other days I noticed, for no apparent reason that I could work out, I'm sure there's a reason, it just didn't feel so smooth, so easy, so fast. So I gave myself leeway, again, comparing, but not comparing. It's like, yeah, okay, today wasn't so good. Okay, so I'm not better than yesterday. But that's an unfair comparison, because maybe I had drinks the night before. Maybe I didn't eat the right food. So it's more like, actually, do you know what? They do this with finance. They say, if you're investing money, don't keep looking every day. It's the long term that counts. And as I sit here today, I have had, over the last year, I've had a bit of a knee problem, so restrictions on some of my sport, yet I am definitely fitter than I was a year ago. That's the sort of comparison you want. I'm comparing me with me, and I'm not looking just on a daily basis where I might beat myself up because I didn't run so fast today. It's over the longer period, compared with myself, I have improved. Now I can congratulate myself, and that makes me want to do more.
Yeah, of course. We also need to be, and I agree, we're competing with ourselves, but we also need to be, and I just made a note of it while you were talking so that I didn't forget this point. We also need to be kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
I run occasionally, just the fun runs, just because I like that. A lot of them associated with some sort of charity or charity event or whatever the case may be. So I don't mind spending the money and, it's not competing. It is competing against myself. Um, but going in that formal event and doing the things and getting the shirts and all that sort of thing. But we also need to understand that the time that I run 10 kilometers now is not the time that I ran 10 kilometers 20 years ago. Age has an impact. Surgeries have an impact. So I've had knee surgery as a result of my military career. I've had shoulder surgeries, all those sorts of things. My ability to perform now is less than my ability was prior to those surgeries. So we need to be a little bit kind and recognize that we might not be better than yesterday, or 10 years ago, but in relative terms, we are still doing the best that we can. I am doing the best that I can today based on how I feel, whether it's diet, whether it's, you might be fighting a little bit of a bug that you don't even know you've got, and your energy's a little bit drained.
So what that's saying to me is understanding where you're at and who you are. And to bring it back to the comparing to other people, this is the bit we miss out. Like when I was a mum with young kids, I would compare myself to these beautifully turned out ladies, no sick on their shirt, no, not disheveled, not looking rushed and stressed. And I compared myself to that, and I would run myself down because of that. But you don't know what their story is. Maybe they have a nanny or something. Who knows? I mean, okay, maybe they're just amazing at it. It doesn't matter though. I am who I am. And I was doing my best, even if some days it just wasn't particularly good. So it's really understanding yourself, where you're at, where you've come from, what's good for you. And just be so careful with this comparison, because maybe you can, from listening to this, realize you can use it to your advantage rather than for being horrible to yourself. And as Brett said, be kind to yourself. Bring in the considerations of where you're at.
Yeah, I think you're right. We don't know what somebody else's life journey is. And that mum who might be beautifully turned out might have a sink full of dirty dishes and a laundry full of dirty clothing, where you've got your dishes washed and all your clean clothes, maybe not folded and put away, but they're clean. Um, where she hasn't done that. She might be beautifully turned out where you're not. It's just different people have different priorities. So be kind to yourself and your journey where you're at, and don't compare yourself to others.
I like that you
Yeah.
said priorities. And I actually think that's a really good topic for another day, because it is about priorities. Like, any of these examples, going to the gym, it's might be those people's priority. It's not my priority. Fitness is actually quite a high priority for me, which is why I do stay fit, but it's not everybody's. So do look at what your priorities are. Like you said, maybe that lady, and thank you for saying that. Where were you 20 years ago when I was beating myself up and you didn't tell me that she had a sink full of dirty dishes, or, hadn't mopped her floor in? I remember a friend saying to me that she hadn't mopped her floor. I can't remember, it was an exceedingly long time. And I was someone, I'm not OCD, but I used to run the mop over my floor every day. So it's like, wow, but nobody knew that. So no one could go, oh my God, look at Vanessa who mops her floor every day. Because we don't talk about this, mums. Like, we're embarrassed about some things. We feel bad about some things, and yet share it, because you know what? You might not be the only one. So thank you for finding that. I wish I'd known that years ago, because, I never thought about that. I did exactly what we're saying to people. Create awareness. Don't fall into this trap of comparing. Wow.
I think you're really right. And I want to take it back to the gym. I used to be a bit of a gym person, not so much anymore. And fitness has always been pretty high on my list of priorities, although I have let it slip from time to time. But if we look at the people in the gym and we go back to that story, different people in the gym have different priorities. You're right. You've got the people over at the weights, pumping iron, big muscles, all those sorts of things. That's their priority. They want that muscular, that big muscle build, the muscle man type, bodybuilder type thing. But then you've got the people who are doing rehab. Their priority is simply to return to where they were, perhaps pre-surgery, or get as close to that as they can. You might have the people doing the yoga, Pilates classes. Their priority is flexibility and core strength. And the people on the treadmill might be in endurance athletes, runners doing 10, 20 marathons or ultra marathons. Everybody has a different set of priorities. And so for the mums, and sorry, veterans, we've gone down the mums path today. For the mums, is being beautifully turned out your priority, or is it knowing that your house is clean and your children aren't going to get sick? Clean floors, clean dishes, clean clothes. That you've got choices on what you eat off, wear the next day, those sorts of things. So it really does come down to priorities, and again, what's important to you. So somebody else's, and I keep going back to it, somebody else's journey and what they're doing, those things are important to them. They don't have to be important for you. And this is where we need to stand up and, well, do I really care about that? Okay. And if it's not important, then let it go.
So maybe we should listen to the talk that's in our head when we're beating ourselves up, because I've done it. I beat myself up for something. But if I actually had a full conversation about it and wasn't so mean to myself, I might actually realize it wasn't a priority for me. But you just see someone else and it's like you aspire to that bit of them. And that's okay. And it might be something you choose to start aiming for. It might not. You might just admire it, and that's okay. Please don't use it to turn it around and beat up on yourself. And I think that's what we do. As I say, I've not quite sure why, and I'm sure there's a biological or historical reason as to why we do this. But that's the bit where we need to step in, catch yourself. What's going on in your head? And how are you being mean to yourself? And one of the common things we say to people is, would you say that to your best friend? You know? And we wouldn't. And it's just very curious that we would say it to ourselves. If our friend says I'm not as fit, we don't give them a hard time about it. And yet, it's just weird, isn't it, that what we would say to the friend in response is different as to what we would say to ourselves. Really curious.
You're absolutely right. And, there's all sorts of different comparisons. So I remember years ago, we had a car, four-wheel drive. It was an older model. It was probably about 10 years old. We had a caravan that we would go on holidays as a family. And the caravan was probably 15 to 20 years old. And it was all paid for. There's no debt owing or anything like that. And we were in the caravan park, and I watched somebody drive in. They had the great big brand new four-wheel drive and the big flash caravan. And I looked at the combination. It was probably, I don't know, 120, maybe $150,000 worth of car and caravan. And it just struck me that, I don't have that. But then, and it would be nice to have the brand new car and the brand new caravan. But then I thought, I don't really need it. I've got everything I need right here. And the more important thing for me, I've got no debt on it. It owes me nothing. I don't have how many thousands of dollars worth of debt just to go on a family holiday.
Mm.
And that to me was more important than that realization that comparison, yes, it might be nice, but do I want the associated debt? What is it going to cost me to achieve that?
Yeah, well, what you got to let go of, because with everything, not just the monetary cost, with everything, if I, come out looking really great, is it what's got to give? What's the flip side of that? Is it the flaws? Is it the whatever? So yeah, that's I think that's a really good story, Brett. It's really helpful to see that. And I think what we've done today, what I'd like to think we've done today, is to help people create awareness around this. Awareness around when you're comparing and what's happening, and how you could tweak it that it's not so detrimental to you, and tweak it more to make it to your advantage. But just understanding more around this topic.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a saying, and I don't know if it occurs everywhere, but it's certainly here in Australia, keeping up with the Joneses. We don't need to keep up with the Joneses next door and have the same as them. We're on our own life journey. It might not be right for us. So I think if we go back and we start wrapping this up and summarizing a little bit, I think the first thing we need to remember is to choose who we compare ourselves with and what is their life journey. All right. And it might be, if we go back and look at Joe Rogan or whoever the famous podcasters are. I don't know why I've got Joe Rogan in my head today, but I do. If we go back to episode number 10 and where he was at that particular time, how many followers did he have back in? Well, I don't know even how long ago that was, but how many followers did he have? How many views did he have? Now, obviously, those views would be a lot more now because people that are finding out about him are going back and looking at some of those ones. But it would not be fair to compare ourselves, our level of success right now, with his level of success right now. So,
Being fair to yourself. Yeah.
yeah, we need to be fair to ourselves. And again, are we better than yesterday? And is it, again, relative to our life journey? And again, if something has come up that's caused us a setback, then is it fair to compare ourselves to before the setback? Or is it only a more recent comparison in the circumstances of today, I suppose?
So, everybody, this is time for reflection and noticing what's going on for you. And we've shown you lots of points at which you can kind of intersect it and make those changes. And so, just have a think now about 2 things you could take away from our chat today that you could implement, just easy things to implement and just, in your a new awareness within you about comparison.
Yep. I think it's something we often get wrong. I think we're being unfair to ourselves when we compare ourselves to others and hold ourselves to a different standard. Be kind to ourselves and, of course, each other. I think that's important as well, and we should point that out. And, actually, I know we're kind of at the end of this, but I think it's also important when we start comparing, we need to be kind to each other. Somebody else's life journey is not yours, and they might be one step better than they were yesterday, and it's unfair to hold them to our own standard.
Absolutely. And that's a really big thing that I won't even start on now, because we're at the end of this one and topics for another day are popping up. So, yeah, thank you very much, Brett. That was a very, very good exploration of comparison.
So thank you. Thanks. Where I think it's important, and I think we need to be kind to ourselves and kind to each other. Thank you,
You
Vanessa.
like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for being with us today on Chaos, Courage and Coffee. Remember, you're not alone and you don't have to figure it all out at once. What part of today's conversation stood out for you?
This podcast is about showing up in the mess, not waiting until it's all sorted out. If today helped, share it with someone else who might need it too.
And if you're navigating your own version of chaos, we'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment, message us, or join the conversation.
We'll be back soon with more honest talk, less pressure, and just enough courage to get through whatever's next.
See you next time on Chaos, Courage and Coffee.